what's this, an iPad? Yeah, up there. And just looking at it is making me nervous. But I'm going to try to use it just one time. And so, good things start with humble beginnings. So we're just going to go with a slight attempt at some technology this morning. No telling how it might go. Well, children's church is dismissed. Thank you. It's the iPad's fault that I forgot. Yeah. So I want to keep going in Hebrews. We went through chapter 11, and then we read a little bit in chapter 12, and I want to keep going in chapter 12, and I want to start with Hebrews chapter 12, verses 12 and 13. And it says this: "Therefore, strengthen your feeble arms and weak knees. Make level paths for your feet, so that the lame may not be disabled, but rather healed." I read that several times, and as I was reading it, I was kind of intrigued with the underlying tone of the words in there. So often in today's society, when someone says something critical, whether it's true or not, it's met with a level of resistance because it's perceived as not being kind or encouraging, right? It's amazing how often people, they desire to hear kind words over true words. And so it caught my attention. And the underlying critical tone of the condition of some believers is one part that I want to discuss. But I also want to discuss the directive about the level paths so that the lame may be healed. I think that's an interesting statement too. And I think there's a very important implied responsibility given to Christians that we don't always fully realize is there in those words. And I think that responsibility manifests itself in lots of different places in life. I think there's lots of opportunities to fulfill this directive about making level paths so that the lame may not be disabled, but rather healed. Let's turn to Proverbs chapter 4. And I'm going to read verses 23 through 27. It says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Keep your mouth free of perversity. Keep corrupt talk from your lips. Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Give careful thought to the paths for your feet, and be steadfast in all your ways. Do not turn to the right or the left. Keep your foot from evil." And in my Bible, the chapter, Proverbs 4, was titled, "Get Wisdom at Any Cost." And I think that the verse 23 addresses a huge topic that isn't necessarily well addressed in our society. In today's day and age, we're exposed to so much information that I think we tend to overindulge. And I think it makes guarding our hearts a lot more difficult. It's an interesting conversation that I hear a lot. It's like, well, is the world really getting worse, or are we just more aware of all the things that go on? And so we feel like we have this impression like, oh man, there's horrible things happening all the time. Well, it depends on how big of a circle that you want to put out there for things that you want to worry about, how many bad things are going to happen in it. So, but I want to give you some interesting statistics from a law firm that handles divorces. I thought this was interesting. And I think it's interesting that these statistics are published because law firms track why divorces happen, and discuss it amongst themselves. And so this is interesting. In 2015, this law firm took a look at 200 of the divorce proceedings that they were handling, and 1/3 of them cited Facebook in their legal proceedings as a problem that was involved in why these people were getting divorced. And then in a subsequent study, they saw that where there was a 20% increase in Facebook use, the following year there was a 4% increase in the divorces in that geographic area. And it's interesting that statistic is out there. There was a book by, he was a colonel in the Army, I'll think of his name, but he wrote a book on killing and on combat, 2 different books. And he was showing that where violent television was introduced to areas that didn't have TV, that in 10 to 15 years, the rate of violence increased hundreds of percentages. And he was making the point that these violent TV shows were making, especially young men, way more violent. And so it just goes hand in hand with this guarding of our hearts. It's that you don't get to put stuff in there for free, right? There's a consequence to the good and to the bad of it. So 20% increase in Facebook use, 4% increase in divorce the following year in that geographic area. This one I thought was interesting. People thinking about leaving their spouse in the last 12 months is twice as high for people who use social media frequently as opposed to those not on social media. And so I thought that was interesting too, that if you're truly just stuck with them, you're able to find more value than if you're out there comparing your life to somebody else's, and you get this, inaccurate thought that other people have it better. And before you get mad, I'm not saying that there's no benefit to social media. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying to guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And that's an important concept. I was going to use the argument that, and I think this is how a lot of times people respond. If I said that welding without eye protection burns your eyes, and you said, well, Levi, do you know how many awesome things were built because we learned how to weld steel? And I'd be like, yeah, but that's not my point. My point is if you don't wear eye protection, you're going to burn your eyes, regardless of the benefits. And I think that's where we need to look at this social media thing, is that we need to protect, especially our marriages. But our each individual hearts is important. In verse 26, it also addresses the path you choose to be on. And this, in conjunction with Hebrews 12:13, I think is a huge, largely under-discussed topic. And so I want to read you a page in this book, How to Stay Christian in College. Just a little quick excerpt here. It says, truth is hot, scary stuff. Truth about God is the hottest of all. It scares some people so badly that they don't even want to search for it. One day, in a, quote, great books course, my students were discussing the great medieval thinker, Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas had been a Christian, and some students were interested in what he believed about God. As they explored his views, one young man became more and more agitated. Finally, he said, "This isn't helping me," and asked whether he could just pick up the assignment and leave. Of course, I said he could. Later, he visited my office, and I found out what his problem was. He told me that he wasn't interested in the truth, that the only thing he cared about was what had immediate practical value for him. Searching for the truth about God, it seemed, was especially impractical because if he found it, his whole world might turn upside down. Or could it be that it would turn right side up? I think this is a difficulty in examining the social norms, especially in a society that's comfortable. When you can't really see that the pot is boiling for you on a day-to-day basis, it's a lot easier to just let the status quo go on and not really examine whether it is what God desires of us individually and as a community. And that's why I think it's really important to critically examine the path that we send our youth on as they enter into adulthood. It always entertains me, and I especially hear this at the sheriff's office. They say, and I think it's true in society too. It says that the only thing people hate more than the way things are is change. And it's always entertaining to me because people come to me and complain like, why don't we do this and why don't we do that and this and that? And I'll come up with a solution and they'll be like, well, that's not what I meant, And it's like, well, it's different, But, change is scary, change is challenging. And I think the worst of it is that it can be lots of hard work with a low yield at the beginning. Especially with exercising. Like, exercising is just a completely disgusting topic to me. Because, you can just try so hard and, you can work out just so hard for 2 weeks and you lose 5 pounds and you're like, I have arrived. And then in one day of, I don't know, ice cream and huckleberry pancakes with white chocolate chips and eggs and sausage and a bowl of cereal at night just as a nightcap, you can gain it all back just right there. And I think it's really unfair. I'm just saying. But this low yield of success makes change really hard. It was interesting to me at our FCA meetings. I started a discussion with the high school kids there about gender in society, and I kind of wanted to feel out where they were, and we got to the point that we agree that there's 2 genders, right, male and female, and that they agreed that they were different, but then I thought, I wanted to spice it up a little bit, and so I was like, well, ladies, what would you like to see men provide for you? If, ideally, what would you like to see men do that's beneficial to you, right? And interestingly, they said that the most common reply, the thing that was on the top of their mind, was safety and security. I thought that was interesting. And so then I asked the guys, and they kind of beat around the bush, and no one wanted to say anything. And I was like, I embrace the awkward. We're not moving on until somebody says something. So just blurt it out. I was like, and don't worry, I won't let any of the girls kill you, no matter what you say. It's a safe zone in here. And then this one kid, in the most timid voice that you could ever imagine, he says this. He says, companionship and maybe babies. And I started laughing. And I was like, maybe babies? I'm just curious, where else are you going to get them? Right? But this is really indicative of the problems that we have in society. If we as men, the highest expectation we can have is maybe women could provide babies, that's a problem. Now, I'm not saying that everyone is going to be blessed with babies. I'm not saying it's 100% across the board. I realize there's lots of things that go into having babies. But the fact of the matter is, ladies, that you hold the monopoly on it. And if guys ever want to be fathers, you're going to be involved. It's a fact. And I just thought it was so interesting that this was a big ask. And so I was telling Nace how entertained I was about it and a little bit disturbed. And he's like, well, you should read them. Genesis chapter 1. I think this is interesting that it's in chapter 1, verses 27 and 28. And it says this: so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. God blessed them and said, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. And I was like, yeah, right there you have it. Be fruitful and multiply. That's what God tells us. And I just don't see this verse in a thought process that is in common usage today. So, it's the only time you see me run. All right, yeah, good job. You probably burned a half a calorie. Yeah, it means, yeah. And not one of those wimpy thin Oreos, a double stuff. Yeah, absolutely. This thought process isn't common today, and so they asked me to speak at baccalaureate this year at the Ronin graduation, and they're like, share a Bible verse or something, and so that's what I read them. Be fruitful and multiply. I said, get married, have kids. It's the best thing ever. I highly recommend it. I love being a dad. That's what I told them. And you could tell everybody was like, really, that's it? That's the sum total? Not like go achieve your dreams and be a doctor. Just, go have babies and it's going to be awesome. That's what I told them. And even people even told me thank you afterwards. Thank you. Get the second calorie, TJ. Let's go. All right, I'm back. But I think this is an important thing for us to discuss. Like for so long, society just acts like families happen on accident. And that's not the case, and we're finding that out. And we're finding that out in some really unfortunate ways. I was just reading an article about a guy that's studying populations, and he said that if he had 30 minutes to speak with President Trump about any issue in the whole world, he would use the entire time to discuss declining birth rates. Pretty interesting, huh? So it's like, well, where are those birth rates? The current birth rate is 1.6, 1.6 babies born per woman. And the minimum to replace ourselves needs to be 2.1. So it's an interesting thing that there's been this narrative, right? Like, oh, we're going to overpopulate the world and it's going to be awful. We can't do that. But it says right here, be fruitful, increase in number, and fill the earth. That's what the Bible tells us. Fill the earth. And so I think it's interesting to see that this mentality has grabbed society so hard, and it's not a biblical one, that we're actually going to experience a lot of downstream consequences. And I don't want to dive into all of them. And but what's really interesting to me is that in doing reading, citing financial difficulty is one of the most frequent reasons given for not having children. And what's interesting is in the current rate of things, that predicted hardship is actually, they're going to, instead of experience it in their 20s and 30s, trying to have kids, they'll actually experience it, this upcoming generation, in their 60s and 70s because of the lack of children in the world to do all these things that you take for granted and that you don't realize happen because the population continues to increase. When it shrinks, there is lots of unintended and really ugly consequences. And to the point that there's a lot of smart people that are saying, boy, this is a serious problem. And they're not even looking at it from a biblical worldview. They're just looking at it like this is going to get ugly. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 7. And I'm going to read you verses 8 and 9. All right. It says, "Now to the unmarried and the widows I say, it is good for them to stay unmarried, as I do. But if they cannot control themselves, they should marry. For it is better to marry than to burn with passion." I think that this verse should be quoted in every high school graduation card with money in it given to every graduate. Huh? Does anybody ever put that verse in there? I think it's the most applicable verse that you could find in the Bible to where they're heading, right? Like, we look at colleges, right? Before, we're like, ooh, we're putting a bunch of irresponsible boys and girls together. We'll put them in separate dorms. Well, that's bad enough. And then they're like, well, we'll put them on separate floors. That wasn't helpful. Now we're like, well, at least they should be in a different room, right? Right next to each other. What could possibly go wrong? And so these situations are occurring, and we're not addressing them. And when we look at Hebrews, when it talks about our feeble arms and our weak knees and making this path straight, taking a bunch of late teenagers and early 20-year-olds, putting them in the mix together without a strong set of biblical guidelines to guide them is just asking for them to trip and fall and hurt themselves, to go lame. And I don't know if you've noticed, but we've been turning out a lot of lame college graduates. Just saying. All right. I got something else to read you. This is in So the Next Generation Will Know. Removing obstacles, right? This is what we're talking about. It is often said that apologetics can, quote, clear the intellectual obstacles that prevent people from hearing the gospel. This was certainly the case for me, Jay Warner. Once I learned what Christianity claimed, I needed to know why people thought it was true. My questions, doubts, and concerns fell away one at a time as I studied evidence for Christianity. In a similar way, there are obstacles that frequently stand between us and the passionate Christians we could become. If left unaddressed, these obstacles can be paralyzing. Here are two we must remove if we want to ignite a passion for God. Personal sin. Hidden sin is often the root cause of apathy. It's hard to be passionate about God if you feel like hiding from Him based on the sin in your life. All of us struggle with our sin nature, and young people are no different. As unconfessed sin increases in our lives, so does apathy. Because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. Just look at our college campuses. The lawlessness is increasing exponentially. Like I would say the moral lawlessness has been going on, but it's getting to the point where even the secular laws are are a hindrance to how they want to behave. Continuing. As a youth pastor in Southern California, I, Jerry Warner, often felt like I was competing with an ever-growing collection of alternative activities. So the first obstacle that he's encouraging being removed is personal sin. The second one, misplaced priorities. Many of my students missed opportunities to grow and learn as part of our group because their families prioritized club sports or other activities. This is ironic because Hadassah's down in Missoula playing softball right now. And I will report they just lost, the worst that they've ever been beat. And so I was just actually telling Brian, I was like, well, maybe we shouldn't play softball on Sunday mornings. Side note, can't make this stuff up. It's not hard to understand how this might happen, given their value and worth in their own right, combined with the pressure to compete. But if we want to develop a passion for God, we have to rein in the passions that distract us from God. And this is real life stuff. I'm sharing that with you because I wrestle with this stuff myself. I don't know where to come down on this, Like it was supposed to be 6 weeks of softball, and I'm like, no. You could practice during the week. You don't need to be playing softball on Sundays. But this weekend I relented, and they got beat, and no one's having fun, and I think it's a little bit funny. But, it's interesting to try to navigate this in real life. It all comes down to our priorities. This is so true. I, Jay Warner, eventually began to encourage the parents of my students to make their kids' spiritual formation a priority, and to do so by rethinking their calendars. We spend time and money on the things we love most. If we want to increase our passion for God or help others increase their passion, we need to prioritize God. Consider the way you're spending time. Have your misplaced priorities become an obstacle? And so, twofold on that thing, right? Young adults have the responsibility to have the correct priorities in their life, but we also have the responsibility to try to create an environment where the correct priorities are easier to obtain, rather than creating an environment where it's hard to pursue correct priorities. Let's see here. Hidden sin and misplaced priorities. That's what he's talking about. I want to read to you. So we jumped ahead to verse 12 in Hebrews chapter 12. Now we're going to jump back to verse 4. And it says this. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. And have you completely forgotten this word of encouragement that addresses you as a father addresses his son? It says, my son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you. Because the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and he chastens everyone he accepts as his son. Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their fathers? If you are not disciplined, and everyone undergoes discipline, then you are not legitimate, not true sons and daughters at all. Moreover, we have all had human fathers who disciplined us, and we respect them for it. How much more should we submit to the Father of spirits and life, and of the Father of spirits and live? They discipline us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good, in order that we may share in his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. I see that we have created a society that leads to those problems of hidden sin and misplaced priorities. And then we scratch our head and wonder why we can't get people to attend church and prioritize their personal relationship with God. And I just feel convicted that our actions a lot of times injure rather than heal. The changes we need as a society are going to be difficult, and pain will be experienced for sure, but I think it's going to be worth it. I know it's going to be worth it. Any time that you can steer people to prioritize God's commands, there is a blessing and a benefit to that. 100% for sure. And that's where, as a Christian congregation, we need to strengthen our feeble arms and weak knees, not let our daughters play softball on Sunday mornings. But it's a challenge. Like, it is hard to have, Hadassah's playing softball for the school, and she's like, Dad, every other girl has a phone that can get Snapchat except me. And I was like, what a bunch of horrible dads, right? But in her mind, there was only one horrible dad, and that was me. And so these things are tough, but we have to be tough in return on how we address these things. And I'm highlighting the marriage relationship because a godly marriage relationship is the basic foundation for a successful society. That's what it is. And it's totally under attack, horribly, on so many different fronts that it's crazy. I'm going to read to you Galatians chapter 6, verses 1 through 10. Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. But watch yourselves, or you also may be tempted. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. If anyone thinks they are something when they are not, they deceive themselves. Each one should test their own actions, then they can take pride in themselves alone, without comparing themselves to someone else. For each one should carry their own load. Nevertheless, the one who receives instruction in the word should share all good things with their instructor. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Whoever sows to please their flesh, from the flesh will reap destruction. Whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially those who belong to the family of believers. All right. And so, this is a delicate situation, right? In order to have influence on people, you got to be around them. And so you gotta approach this guidance in an appropriate way, right? If you just bash people over the head, they just want to avoid you rather than let you influence their life. So, gentleness and grace are key ingredients in dealing with people, especially as it pertains to relationships. Second, we reap what we sow. That's why we have to be so careful about the path that we put young adults on. If we encourage money and pleasure and self-gratification, in your life, those things are not what God calls us to do. That selfishness is dangerous. And once you get down that path, anybody that's ever been on the wrong road knows that it's sometimes quite difficult to get back to the right place. Just go take the wrong exit in Utah, down by Salt Lake one time, and you'll know what happens when we take a high school graduate and send them off on a wrong road. They could be lost a very long time trying to figure out where to go. And I think that's why those verses were put in the Bible. It doesn't have to be popular to be true. And we're letting a lot of untrue things become popular because we don't want to speak against it, because we don't want to be given the appearance of being unloving or combative or whatever. And it's having really detrimental effects. And then, lastly, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. It's important for us to value this gathering right here. To try to see people that have needs, to encourage people that seem to be struggling, to take this community right here and prioritize it so that it can have the strength to influence our community outside these walls in the ways that God would have us do that. So, like I said, I'm certainly not bringing this up from any position of moral high ground whatsoever. I'm just telling you, like, it's a super big struggle. But it's one that if we don't tackle it, if we don't start telling people, no, this is what you should be doing, and you really should not be doing that in a loving way, we're doing them a disservice. Let me see here. As advertised, Matthew, this is working. Something pop up there? Yeah, sweet. All right, check this out. So the kids wanted to be entrepreneurs, and they wanted to sell cotton candy, and so last week they had gotten a booth down at the farmers market or whatever, and didn't do any good. And I was like, listen. Anything that you want to have successful, if you introduce a mini donkey to it, immediately increases the cool factor, right? And so just like what we were talking about, like I want to leave you with a little action item here, all right? We'll just that concludes the sermon. Now I'm going to give you an action item that I want you to ponder. And so, so, there was an opportunity to maybe sell some cotton candy, maybe have a gruesome accident on the highway, but you just gotta roll the dice sometimes. At first, I told Uriah, you're 6'2", over 200 pounds. You anchor the mini donkey so nothing bad happens. But then, so it was a booming success. Is all I'm saying. Is it was successful. So it got me to thinking. We have Vacation Bible School, July 7th through the 10th, right? And so what they did, and I don't know if you can see it, it might be a step too far to try to make a picture bigger, huh, Matthew? Well, if you look at the cotton candy, you can see that it's tied with one of Nace's bracelets that has a Bible verse on it. But anyways, oh yeah, like the front one, you can see it hanging down there clear as day with a wristband on. So what we're going to do is the church wants to promote our VBS with mini donkeys and cotton candy. So next weekend after church, I'm going to make sure I have the cotton candy. I'm going to be looking for people to help walk up and down the streets in Ronan, knock on doors, hand out cotton candy, and Vacation Bible School leaflets because it starts the 7th. So it's a little action. If you're interested, I feel fully confident that I can talk the supplier of the cotton candy into giving me as much as I need for this project. And but we need hands to go hand it out. I think it's going to be awesome. So it's something to think about, that you can be on the cutting edge of this, reintroducing donkeys to ministry. I think it's long overdue, right? If you read the Bible, it was incredibly successful, the last person that utilized a donkey. So I think that we should give it a whirl. That's what I think. So next Sunday, that's what we're going to be doing, is advertising for our Vacation Bible School. And Jessica will put out an email or whatever and make sure to remind you. We'll give you an exact time. It'll be sometime afternoonish or so, but we'll come up with an exact time when we're ready. So anyways, like I said, I love this family of believers. I think you're awesome. And I just want to encourage you to continue to strengthen yourself spiritually. Ask the Holy Spirit to give you the strength to tackle the tasks that we have in front of us. So Anyways, do we have one last song? All right, let's hit it. Oh, what? Oh, you made it bigger? All right, well, we got an extra couple minutes. Yeah, can you see? Oh, yeah, you can see the wrist, like between the bucks on the saddle there. Yeah, those were the glow-in-the-dark wristbands. I just think it's going to be a booming success if we get those out to kids, and the dentists will thank us, and it'll just be cool. Yeah. All right, thank you.